In May of 1985, the strongest player in the world was Garry Kasparov, as later that year he would become the 13th world champion, defeating Anatoly Karpov. But in this game, he has the black pieces against German grandmaster Robert Hübner, and the game becomes quite sharp rather quickly. Kasparov calculates brilliantly to win in less than 30 moves, and I want to show you how that happened. Now we have the English opening c4, and Kasparov replies with e5. And then we have knight c3, d6, and d4, which Kasparov takes. Queen takes. Kasparov develops some minor pieces, and Hübner wants to put his light squared bishop on the long diagonal. And now knight c6, the knight comes out with gain of tempo. The queen has to move. And already black has 3 minor pieces out. And here, in fact, white already has some problems because the pawn on c4 is attacked, and what do? If you play b3, then d5 actually leads to a sharp but favorable position for black, which I won't go too much into in this video. So in this position, Hübner defended the pawn with the move knight d5, and Kasparov plays knight e5, threatening the pawn again. And now b3, and then knight e4. So the black army pushes forward and attacking the queen again. Queen e3, knight c5, and bishop b2, putting the bishop on the long diagonal. c6, Kasparov wants to drive that knight away from d5. So knight f4, and now once again Kasparov attacks the white queen. Queen d4, and now this sharp move knight e4, just asking white to play f3, which he didn't do. f3 actually leads to, in the end, a lost position for white, and it's kind of complicated, so I won't go too deep into it, but queen a5 is a problem for white here. So Hübner plays a better move than f3. He plays bishop h3. Kasparov plays queen a5 check, which, as you can see, is problematic. You now have to move the king. You don't want to put it on d1 because of the fork on f2, so king f1 is kind of forced. And now Kasparov plays knight g takes f2. After bishop takes e6, Kasparov just recaptures. The rook is trapped in the corner. Hübner takes on an e6. Kasparov doesn't want to take the rook now because of queen takes e4, so instead king d7 is a stronger move. And Hübner plays knight h3. And here, taking the rook in the corner would go from winning to losing in one move after queen takes e4. So of course Kasparov didn't do that. Instead he took the knight on h3. He calculates and then he evaluates that several moves later, even though material will be equal, his position will be winning. So the winning move is knight takes knight instead of knight takes rook, allowing the queen to take the knight on e4. And after rook e8, Hübner has this move knight c5 check, and then follows it up with queen g4, winning the knight on h3. So queen takes h3. But as I said earlier, Kasparov had calculated that although this position is equal on material, the white position is lost because of the vulnerability of the white king. After the clever move bishop to e7, just giving up the pawn on g7. We'll see why this position is so bad for white. If we look at white's options, so there's this open f-file that the king is on, rook is coming to, and if you, for example, play king g2 to get out of that file, then there is this move bishop f6, which is a simultaneous threat of obviously taking on b2, but also taking on e2, and this is a huge problem. For example, if you play bishop takes bishop, and then there is rook takes e2, leading to a mating attack like this. I'll just show you how white will mate in this position, like this. So this is mate. Let's go back to the position after the move bishop e7, which Kasparov played here. Then Hübner is in trouble, deep trouble. King g2 doesn't work. He took on g7. There is also the try queen g4 to protect the e2 pawn, but this also loses. I'll just give you a sample line here. Rook h to f8, king e1, bishop g5. This is actually a nasty threat of queen b4, followed by queen d2, mate. So here queen e3 threatens the same kiss of death, mate on d2. And here queen e5 threatens the rook on a1. So if you play, for example, rook b1, then there is this clever deflection h5, followed by a check, and then queen e4, which is a beautiful queen fork like this. So this is just a sample line after white's earlier queen g4, which by the way he didn't do. So after the move bishop e7, we've looked at why king g2 loses and why queen g4 loses. He took the pawn on g7, and instead of trying to save his rook, Kasparov already knew several moves ago that he didn't need both of his rooks. So he played rook h to f8, allowing the rook to be captured. So takes, and the vulnerability of the white king will tell very quickly. For example, king g2, queen f2 checkmate, so that means that king e1 is forced. And here followed queen f2 check, king d1, and queen d4 check. So here, obviously, if you put the king on e1 or c1, then the rook on a1 will fall with check. So king c2 is forced. Hübner is trying desperately to keep his king on the light squares, but this will be an impossible task, as we'll see. After the move queen e4 check, now you can't play king d1 or c1 because then the rook on h1 will be taken with check. So king d2 and bishop g5. Now the bishop joins king c3, and here Kasparov played queen e5 check, and this is where Hübner resigned, and I want to show you why he resigned. He doesn't have a lot of options. If he plays king c2, then there is queen takes e2 check, and if you play king king b1, then rook f2 will mate very quickly on the second rank. And if you play king c3, then there is this mate on d2 like this. And so after the move queen e5 check, where Hübner resigned, we looked at why king c2 doesn't work. King b4 is a little bit more interesting, but here there is a very clever winning move with king b6. So even the king joins the mating attack. There is the threat of queen a5 checkmate. So how do you deal with that? Well, you could try a4, but then bishop f6 threatens queen c5 checkmate. So for example, a5, king a6, and now there is no way to stop the sequence queen c5 followed by queen takes a5 checkmate. So like this, queen checks and then checkmate like this. This is why after the clever move king b6, the pawn move a4 doesn't work. And if you play king a3, then there is also mates after queen a5, queen d2, and then bishop f6, even though it's not a check. The threat here is queen a5 checkmate. So b4, queen b2, king a4, queen checks again, king a3, and bishop b2 checkmate. So very sharp and also very well calculated by Garry Kasparov. So Hübner resigned after Kasparov's 28th move, which was Queen e5 check. Alright, thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.